Hey loves, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Faith, and today guys I'll be checking out Ben Shapiro debate student who thinks that parents should allow kids to exploit their gender. You guys, I'm super excited for this, and if you're yet to subscribe to this channel, please consider subscribing. Give this video a massive thumbs up, comment, share, and all that good stuff. And without much ado, let's see what this video is all about.
Hello, my name is Brad. I'm here representing a lot of the progressive students here at UMG, and I just have to. I wanted to know your stance on trans people as a whole, and then I'd like to maybe have a conversation, a short one about
Sure.
what you believe.
Well, first of all, thanks for coming in and asking a question. I said that's great. I mean, sometimes we don't get that. I mean, my stance on trans people is I'd like to characterize this differently. I think that there's a few different categories here, and everybody's lumping everybody together in one category. There are people who have long-standing gender dysphoria, right, or gender identity disorder, right? That's a real active disorder that does exist. Okay, that does not mean that these people are members of the opposite sex. Okay, this is where I reject the argument that if you have gender dysphoria, you have an actual mental disorder under the DSM-5. This means that if you're a man who believes you're a woman, this makes you a woman. You're not a woman, you're a man who believes you're a woman. I have tremendous sympathy for that difficult body dysmorphic condition. That does not make you a member of the opposite sex, because only objective biological reality can make you a member of one sex or another sex. Then there are people who claim to be members of sexes that don't exist, who claim pronouns that don't exist, who claim that they are gender fluid, which is not really a thing or has never really been characterized. There are folks who claim that without any evidence whatsoever that they have gender identity disorder, and that suddenly they discover at the age of 15 that they're gender questioning, but there's not really a persistent level of belief that has lasted for a persistent series of time, and people are being given testosterone or being given surgeries on the basis of this. And then there are people who are intersex, which again is another category. And I think what happens in these conversations, people tend to conflate all these categories. So what they'll do is they'll say, well, trans people exist. And I'll say, okay, so what do you mean by that? And they'll say, well, there are certain people who have Klinefelter syndrome. Okay, those are not trans people. Those are intersex people. That's a completely different category. Those are people who have an actual biological condition. They still happen to be a member of one sex, by the way.
You guys, I love the fact that Ben Shapiro is schooling these students on the different categories of trans people, and I'm also learning a lot from here because I did not even know all of these categories before, and this is very interesting. Let's continue, guys.
They're still sexed.
Yeah.
They just happen to have secondary sexual characteristics of the other sex. Okay, so that's my general perspective.
Yeah, I think for sake of brevity, I think we'd be able to have a conversation about gender, and I really fail to understand how you claim that there's a lot of genders that are made up, and this is. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? I think,
sure.
Yeah.
So I think that there's been a false distinction that's been made between sex and gender, and then gender has been read in as more important than sex. So basically, the idea of gender was a concept that was brought up by a college professor named John Money back in the 1960s. And the basic idea is that gender was a set of cultural characteristics that we impose on people of a particular sex. So it's not that women have babies, it's that women are gendered as though they have babies, and this is what makes a woman a woman. Okay, that's not correct. Women have babies. Or we'll say that gender is a series of characteristics that we put, it's a series of stereotypes, essentially. But then you'll see the trans community argue that if a boy has has stereotypical attributes of this gender, this makes them a member of the opposite sex, which doesn't make sense. You can have effeminate boys. You can have masculine girls. I mean, this has been a feature of life for all of human history. That doesn't make them a member of the opposite sex. So when people say gender, what I want them to do is define what they mean by gender. If they just mean a set of culturally attributable attributes, and they say that that's completely separate from sex, first of all, I reject that. I think there is a strong correlation between gendered behavior and sex.
Yeah, I mean that's how we socialize children. I mean, I think it's a pretty the connection's there, and I don't think it goes.
It's not
further.
all socialization is the argument that I would make, and that's.
You guys, I agree with what Ben Shapiro just said. There are really gender behaviors, because I have seen cases where a boy acts like a girl and a girl acts like a boy. That does not mean that they belong to the opposite sex, because sometimes this usually happens with kids while they are growing up, and at the end of the day, you see that they grow out of it. you see a situation where a tomboy grows into a very feminine woman and she just totally forgets that phase of her life. That does not mean that she should transition into the opposite gender because she felt like that while she was growing up, or she felt like that at a particular time. Let me know your thoughts on this one. What do you think about gender behavior? Do you think it exists? Leave your comment in the comment section and let's continue.
And that's backed by the fact that in the primate kingdom, for example, there are heavily gendered areas of behavior. The notion that basically boys and girls when they're born are androgynous widgets, and then we make a boy by giving him a truck, we make a girl by giving her a doll, that's not true on any sociological level.
Again, I find it really... So we just clapped for Ben comparing primates to humans. I want to establish that. And then on top of that...
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the attribute of mammalian biology, so yes. In fact, I will argue, I'll compare human beings to literally any member of the mammalian species when we're talking about sexual dichotomy, which is the basis of all reproduction in mammalian species, yes.
Yeah, okay, but I do want to bring it back to the concept of socialization in children.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked a long time in public schools. I've noticed that students, this gender line that we're speaking of, the binary that you were referring to, I think many of us fall within those two lines, man and woman. I'm not saying it's you either have one piece of genitalia or the other. I'm saying like we have masculine and feminine traits throughout that we pick up from our family, the world around us.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm feeling, if you agree with that.
But that's not what makes you a man or a woman. If a boy likes dolls, that doesn't make him a girl. And if a girl likes trucks, that doesn't make her a boy. And I feel that we're doing grave damage to kids by arguing the opposite.
I think we should allow them the space to explore that.
I mean, by the way,
yeah.
I don't, first of all, I do think that it is very important to provide rules and rules for kids. I think the idea that kids are to be sort of left out there in the wild and then they do whatever they do, we don't treat them like that with nutrition, we don't treat them like that with education, we don't treat them like that with a lot of things. And the idea of teaching boys to actually embrace their boyhood, I think is quite a good thing. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, and there are kids who are, as I say, boys who will be more effeminate, and they shouldn't be bullied for that or mistreated for that.
Yeah.
But to suggest that this makes them trans or makes them a member of the opposite sex is the thing I'm really arguing against, because that ends in a lie that leads to suicidal ideation, it leads to tremendous confusion, it leads to tremendous psychic pain. You're telling a lie to a kid, and lying to kids is not something I'm very much in favor of.
Yeah, and I think, speaking on suicidal ideation, I think maybe denying the fact that, like, it's okay for, a young person to decide if they fall within a certain gender line. I fail to understand how that affects you personally and how that hurts the child.
Right. So anytime society sets a rule, it affects me personally. You're not asking me how a kid in Saskatchewan identifying affects me personally. You're asking me to go along with the lie that kid's personal subjective sense of identity shapes the definition of sex, and that I refuse to go along with. Because as you say, kids are in fact malleable. And the notion that we're supposed to teach all 5-year-old kids that you can be a member of the opposite sex is deeply disturbing, chaotic, and wrong.
Again, and that's not what I'm prescribing. I'd like to be clear that what I'm saying is they should be allowed to explore whatever portion of.
I mean, if by allow you,
it
depends. If by allow you mean, do I think the kids should be like locked in the Matilda chokey for playing with a doll or something? No.
You guys, this is a very interesting debate, and what the student is saying in essence is that kids should be allowed to feel or exploit the gender they are gravitating towards. For example, if a boy is playing with a doll, the boy should automatically be allowed to transition into a girl. You guys, let me know what you think about this one, because I do not understand what he's trying to say here. I'm getting a bit confused, but let me know in the comment section what this guy is actually trying to say here. Anyway, guys, let's wrap this video up.
But that is the case often. Yeah, in very orthodox spaces.
Child abuse is illegal, and it should be illegal. Okay, but the notion that if my kid expresses gender confusion, that I'm not allowed to say to my kid, my son comes home and he says one day, "You're a girl," and I say he says I'm a girl, and I say to him, "You're not a girl. That's biologically untrue. You're a boy." When you're a kid, you're confused in your feelings. The idea that that's a form of child abuse is a lie. That is not a form of child abuse. That's actually how you parent.
Yeah, and again, I'm allowing you that space, but on the other hand, you're opposing the very opposite. You're saying that it's sick and twisted for parents to allow their kids to explore different parts of themselves.
It is sick and twisted to present kids with the notion that boys and girls are not separate in humanity, and that boys and girls are not two separate and dichotomous forms of the species Homo sapiens, and that the idea that there is no biological reality to that whatsoever, so that a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy, that is a form of child abuse. That is the same thing as me teaching my kid that my kid can be a horse. My kid cannot be a horse. That is not real. And if I were to teach my kid and take seriously the argument that my kid could be a horse, I'd be doing them tremendous psychic damage. And I'm sorry, I feel like we're kind of running out of time here, but I really appreciate that.
Could I just get one more thing?
Sure, well, go for it.
Again, I'd like to, we're making comparisons to animals, and you're getting a chant for it. And again, it's not my favorite thing.
Yes,
but
because...
but I appreciate your point in saying that, you would be willing to allow another family to let their child explore, certain genders.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't allow a child to explore the lie that they can be a member of the opposite sex.
Oh, there you
but
go.
If they want,
But
if they become, I disagree with the basic idea of quote unquote genders entirely. If the idea, because if you're going to degrade everything down to the behavior of human beings, then we all have our own genders. Literally every single human, we could just have names. We can get rid of the idea of gender entirely, and I can just call you Bob, right? I mean, like we can all have our own. That's the easiest way to do this. We treat each other as individuals with a bevy of different attributes, rather than saying my gender is pansexual, fluid, 45, XYZ, right?
That's so dishonest.
How is that dishonest?
You're making this this straw man about pansexual gender.
No, I mean
name a gender. It is, and you know it is.
So you do it. You name a gender that you think exists outside of male and female.
No, I agree that people can lie within the bounds.
Okay, well, again, I really appreciate the time of the back and forth. I think it is productive, and I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, no, and again, I don't believe any of you have malice views. I think a lot of your views are founded in the reality of the world. But I hope that you at least would allow yourselves to come out to some of the more progressive groups and maybe have these conversations.
By the way, having conversations like this, I encourage everybody who's conservative to have these kind of conversations going to this side.
That was my intent in coming here. And seeing how hard you guys were on the protesters out there who were using their First Amendment right was really tough to watch, especially for Americans who claim that the First Amendment is something that you co-sign. I'm sorry, but I have to say it.
I wasn't out there, so if anybody was mistreated as a protester, then I apologize on behalf of whoever mistreated a protester.
Wow, you guys, that was such a beautiful debate, and I totally agree with what Ben Shapiro said in this video. You don't just let a child exploit the opposite gender because they suddenly feel like that. In short, parents should stop encouraging their children to exploit the opposite gender. That is what I feel. I really learned a lot from Ben Shapiro, and I'm gonna give it to Ben Shapiro. He is very good at debating, and he won this one hands down, and I really had fun reacting to him. If you guys totally enjoyed watching, give this video a massive thumbs up, comment, share, and all that good stuff. And whatever thought you have about this video, drop it in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.